Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good evening. So today our group will have a forum under the topic of how can we use economic tool to deal with environmental problems. So in this forum, myself, Muhammad Nazhan, will be representative as a moderator, and alongside with me I would have three brilliant panel with me, which is panel number one, Sister Zahira. Okay. Panel number two, Sister Adawiyah. And the last panel is Sister Anis. So in this forum, our group will discuss about how can we use economic tool to overcome environmental problem. So before we start, I will give the introduction about our topic. So what is environmental tool? So environmental tool slash environmental mechanism is the economic tool or slash economic mechanism is the mechanism that being used in economic perspective, such as tax, permits, and subsidies. So this mechanism actually helps to overcome environmental problems such as poverty, air pollution, water pollution, etc. So in this forum, our first panel, which is Sister Zahira, will discuss about a law enforcement, which is she will elaborate more about that later. And then our second panel, which is Sister Adawiyah, will continue the discussion and give an initiative in economic perspective on overcoming the environmental problem. And lastly, our last panel, which is Sister Anis, will discuss about how can we actually overcome a specific environmental problem, which is poverty. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to the Sister Zahira for the first point in our forum.
Our first environmental is environmental laws and regulations. Desire to protect the environment is at the heart of environmental law. The desire can be seen right across population in countries. It's because the environmental law is not just about valuing the environment, but protecting it so we as population live within the carrying capacity of the earth. A better way to think about an environmental law is as the law of environmental problems. Some problems are going to be very local, such as contaminated land. Others are going to be global, such as climate change. A common feature of environment problems is that they are both physically complex and socially complex. Physically complex because they involve ecosystems. If we put fertilizer on agricultural land and it runs off into rivers, a whole range of implications might happen for the natural environment and also for human health. Socially complex because environment problems are often caused by a range of different people. They're not intending to harm environment, but each of their activity contributing to environmental problem. Department of Environment play a significant role in environmental law, and that's because they have the authority and the capacity to develop collective responses in relative to these problems. Environmental law is not just a response to environment problems. It was also part of a commitment to make societies more justice, more fair, and more democratic. An important thing in environmental law is environment justice. Environment justice means many different things. It might mean justice between nations, justice between generations, justice within local communities, or even a form of justice that takes the right of the earth into account. Environmental law often requires limiting people's behavior. It will await the sentiment, but while it is controversial, it is also necessary, and it's necessary, coming back to my first point, because we have to live within the carrying capacity of the earth. To relate this, the use of economic tools will allow additional environmental improvements to be made at this cost, or will allow present standards to be met more cost effectively. Next slide. Okay. First economic tool is charges, fees, or taxes. These are prices paid for discharge or of pollutants to the environment based on the quantity or quality of pollutants. To be most effective, the charge is levied directly on the quantity of pollution. It is called emission tax or charge. Even though this is difficult to measure or monitor, it may be necessary to levy a charge on a proxy for the emissions, typically on the resource that cause the pollution, which called product tax or charge. Second, tradable permits. These are similar to charge and taxes, except that they operate by fixing an aggregate quantity of emissions rather than charging a price for each unit of emissions. Instead of being charged for release, one needs to hold a permit to emit or discharge. By controlling the total number of permits, one is effectively controlling the aggregate pollution quantity. Debt subsidies, where taxes or charges can be used as a penalty on discharge. Subsidies can be used to reward the reduction of discharge in a similar manner. The financial incentive is effectively the same. Even though the flow of funds is in a different direction, a subsidy program will involve a transfer of funds from the government to the industry, while a charge program would be a revenue source for the government. Subsidies may be relatively explicit in the form of grants and soft loans, or be somewhat indirect, such as in a just representation schedule. Next slide. Next, land acquisition by the state or conservation organization. First, secure land for reforestation and rehabilitation of flora and fauna that has been classified as endangered. Second, declaration must not be leaved with reasons pertaining to expanding further land development. Next slide. Next, the government must place priority on certain forests. The example is the mangroves. Mangroves, because the ecosystem of mangroves are very hard to replicate and rehabilitate. You need land that thrive within its natural habitat as well as the natural formation of tree roots and that acts as a protective barrier. It is important in maintaining water quality, trapping sediment, and filtering pollutants originating from activities in the surrounding areas. Mangrove ecosystem acts as windbreakers, protecting against strong winds at coastlines, which protects the coast from erosion and protect the environment from extreme weather change. So it is clearly shown that environment law protect the environment. So we as population live within the carrying capacity of the earth. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sister Zahira. So there you go. The explanation from our first panel about the importance of enforcement the law into the to overcome environmental problem. So what has been discussed, we can understand that within the environmental law that being regulate, it will avoid or prevent the environmental problems such as deforestation, logging, and water pollution. So next, into our second panel, which is Sister Adawiyah. She will explain more about the initiative ways in economy perspective to overcome environmental problem. So yeah, Sister Adawiyah.
Okay, in my opinion, selling service instead of selling product to avoid pollution can solve environmental problem because selling service is another way to stabilize the economy instead of selling things because the process of making the products definitely use so many procedures and it affects the environment. I have two ideas of selling service, which is just public transportation and selling application instead of papers for study and work. For the first point, we have to influence people to use Grab card, to use Grab, sabar. For the, huh? Okay. In my opinion, service, sabar, boleh tu. In my opinion, selling service instead of selling product to avoid pollution can solve environment problem, because selling service is another way to stabilize the economy instead of selling things, because the process of making the products definitely use so many procedures and it affects the environment. I have two ideas of selling service, which is use public transportation and selling application instead of paper for study and work. For the first point, we have to influence people to use Grab car instead of their own car to minimize the transportation smoke. Besides, using the service of school buses to send children to school and parents do not have to send kids to school. Thus, it prevents air pollution, especially in the early morning. People need to breathe in fresh air. Instead of that, using public automobiles can minimize the traffic congestion. For an analogy, if the congestion occurs for a long time and is jammed, the transports are stuck at the highway for so long. Every transport produces lots of smoke. Then it brings air pollution when carbon monoxide collide with the air. In that case, it tends to be air pollution that affects society's health. We talk so many times about air pollution. So what are the examples of air pollution? Usually, air pollution tend to haze, acid rain, ozone, and greenhouse. That is the first idea. The second one is using computer or smartphone application to do work or study rather than papers to reduce deforestation. For your information, the well-known Malaysian millionaire named Irfan Khairi, who lived in Dubai, had made a software that functioned for the society. He paid freelancer.com and guru.com that helped to create the software. It is a platform for service. He got some programmers to design his plan, and in creating a platform, the programmer he made are from India and Pakistan because it is so cheap compared to programmers from another countries. The app that he created was named Flow, Flow. After 3 weeks, the platform had been created. Then he asked his virtual assistant from the US to call 10 of the toughest companies to make appointment with them. He asked American assistant to do that work to have a highest expectation and perception from these countries, because these were American females spoke in the accent. The managers of the companies agreed to the idea for their business benefits. They bought the application from Khairi, which cost 1 million ringgit. Okay, this is a selling service that gives lots of benefits to us. Back to our topic of creating and using application for daily use. Instead of saving the world from deforestation that harm the environment, it solves someone's economic problem. But to have all of this, we have to keep trying for a bright future in this business. Another benefit of selling service is more guaranteed profit rather than selling products. Because we have to prepare capital to buy products. And we also have more reverse in selling products, because recently too many new founders grow their brands to attract more customers to buy their products, such as cosmetics, skincare, accessory, household, kid toys, and clothes. Okay, in that case, we have to know that cosmetic and skincare consists of various chemical substances that lead to water and air pollution when the factories throw out the waste into the river and the smoke to the air respectively. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Adawiyah, for the explanation. But if I may ask, why do you think the usage of application is better than paper? Because as we all know, we've been using paper for our study mechanism for a very long time. So why do you think that using application is the better ways in avoiding environmental problem?
Okay, thank you, moderator. Because the more usage of peppers, the more deforestation occur, and the benefit of application or software application is more flexible because we can use them everywhere and whenever we are going without bringing books, papers, and a lot of things. In fact, the more we are using papers, the more deforestation occur. If we see this recently, perhaps it doesn't matter. But in maybe in 2040, at the time, everyone used all technologies such as reading news, ordering stuff, submitting words, and lesson using textbooks for students from smartphone. Due to the increasing development of our country in education, many publishers publish new books and this tend to cause deforestation to occur continuously. If the society is more exposed and consumed to using applications or platforms in virtual life without us noticing, deforestation will slowly decrease. Like people say, everything is on their phone and convenience is at your fingertips. That's all. Thank you.
I see. Okay. Okay. Thank you. We can understand the initiative idea that be represented by Sister Adawiyah. Hopefully, will help to overcome the environmental problem. So before we moving on to our last panel, I would like to ask beforehand a question to Sister Anis. So, Sister Anis, what do you think economic mechanism or economic tools that been used to overcome the environmental problem, which is poverty, and how do government or any party would use the economic tool to actually overcome poverty?
Sorry, Brother Nazan, can you repeat the first question?
Okay, my first question is what economic tools that you could suggest? Okay,
Okay.
what
Okay.
economic tools that you could suggest? And second, how do you, how can you explain actually to by using the economic tools to actually overcome the problem, which is poverty?
Oh, okay. Um,
Mm.
First, thank you, Brother Nazhan, for your question. Okay, first of all, I'm going to um, tell another perspective on how to reduce poverty, which correlated to the economic tools that I'm going to explain later. Okay. Um,
Okay.
have, okay. Have you ever heard about in hadith Rasulullah said that kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi, which means all of you are shepherds and each of you is responsible for your own flocks. Mean the government itself have the government itself has to carry out their responsibility and plays main role for the development of the country, right? And we know that the government actually the one who can control the economic tools to reduce the poverty. How can I say like that? Because okay, brother, sorry, sister Rabiatul Adawiyah, can I ask you a question that have you ever asked your father about the tax that he needs to pay? Sister Adawiyah?
Yes.
Have you asked your father?
Yes.
There's so many tax, right? Okay. Since every citizen that have been registered in Malaysia, they need to pay many taxes. Many taxes include assessment tax, include the personal income tax, and other taxes that will contribute as the main source of income for the government. But I'm questioning where does the tax is should be benefits to. So even though most of the Malaysian pay many taxes, but we can't really see where the tax goes after the government control them. Because in Malaysia, there's still 90%. Can you move to the next slide? There's still 19% poverty still occurring in Malaysia. Local Malaysian still having the issue of poverty as stated by the United Nations Statistical Division in Malaysia. Even though we have no authority or the power to change the government, but yet we still have the power to give our own opinion, to deliver our free speech on the tax that the government use or their own main income should be benefits to the citizen of to the society of Malaysia. Okay. So I want to mention that the economic tools that um, can help to reduce the poverty is the tax itself, and on how it can help to reduce the poverty is by the government should use the tax by providing free houses, and the second one is by providing free transportation for all to the public. Okay. I will go to the first point, which is providing the affordable house scheme for the poverty. Brother Nazhan, have you ever know about
Yes.
Rumahku Selangorku?
Yes.
Okay.
I have heard.
About that, okay. Rumahku Selangorku actually is a housing scheme that based in Selangor that some citizenship of Selangor can apply for that house, but under certain condition, which is one of the condition is the applicant must have income between 1,000 to 10,000. So I'm questioning, I'm wondering why these conditions should be used, because most of the homeless people in Malaysia, they even don't have job. And for sure they do not have any main salary, any source of income to pay for the house. So in my humble opinion, I should say that the government should lower the conditions in order for the poverty to apply, or this house should be given to those who really in needs. And the second thing that I want to highlight about is the transportation in Malaysia. We still in Selangor. Imagine we are in Selangor. Free bus Selangorku. Since I was studying in Selangor before, so I commonly use this bus to go to the somewhere near from my school. So actually, this free bus is very benefits the society, especially for the certain people who have less salary to buy a car. They can use this free bus. Then I want to give my suggestion that the government should provide free bus, example bus Selangorku, for all states in Malaysia, include Peninsula Malaysia, also Sabah and Sarawak, because the issue of poverty is not occurring in Selangor only, but it's occur in all states in Malaysia, right? So when the people who are having a problem with a house or safe place or maybe transportation problem, they can use these initiatives that provided by the government for them to go to get a job, to find a job, or maybe they can go to the nearest place they want to go and do a little job at least for them. So this initiative is, I think, is the most suitable approach for the government to do in this short term upcoming time. And that's all lah. Am I answering your question,
Okay.
Farin Azhan?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Thank you very much, Sister Anis, for the very comprehensive explanation and answer. So from her answer, we can understand that taxes is the mechanism that the government can use to actually overcome the poverty problem in Malaysia. So with that, thank you very much for all the panel with a very brilliant and good explanation from each of every person panel. So to summarize our forum, we can see that economic tools or mechanism are very parallel to overcome environmental problem. So that we as a citizen, as a Malaysian, should actually use the economic tools wisely and do not take things for granted, so that our environment and our country, beloved country, will always be sustained throughout the years and to upcoming generation. So with that, thank you very much for listening, and yeah, thank you. That's all from us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.